Welcome to Monday night at El Shaddai. Good to see everybody here with us tonight, and a special welcome to our live streaming audience all over the world. I think I'm not prone to a whole lot of superlatives, but I think tonight's going to be a really interesting and special night. Avi just kind of whispered in the back room to Bill Voice and I a couple of his topics tonight, and phenomenal stuff. It's going to be a great night for teaching. Before we do anything, why don't we stand up and I'm going to have just a word of prayer, and then I'll introduce Avi and we'll get right at it. Our dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity that we have to be taught your word and what your plans are. So we just ask this night that you watch over everything that Avi says, that you just give him your words, Father. You make our hearts and our minds receptive to what he has to say. And Father, we give you all the honor and the glory forever. Amen. You may be seated. We have with us tonight a gentleman by the name of Avi Lipkin, who is a friend of El Shaddai Ministries, has been for a long time. Avi is an author, he's a lecturer, and a well-known speaker around the world. And Avi let me know that this is probably going to be his last time with us in this capacity. He is, bless his heart, he's entering the political arena in Israel. I think we've got a little word on that last time, but this is a serious deal. So this is probably his last time with us as a lecturer and as a friend of El Shaddai in terms of the speaking capacity. Because when you're a politician in Israel, there's certain rules you got to live by that are a little more stringent than, unfortunately, some of our politicians have. So Avi has come to speak to us tonight, and there'll be a time afterwards for if you want some materials or want Avi to sign anything, that'll be in the back table after it's over with. But Mr. Avi Lipkin.
Are we on? Yes, we are on. Good. Thank you. I hope you applaud at the end. There's a saying, better than to be invited is to be invited back. So I was here 2 months ago, praise God, and I'm very, very extremely happy to be back. I'm going to be talking primarily tonight about the book of Exodus. Last time I was here, I talked primarily about the book of Genesis. There's a reason I spoke about Genesis, and I'll say so very briefly, and then I'll explain why we're talking about Exodus. But before I do so, I wanted to give a short explanation about the political party in Israel. Israel is a parliamentary democracy, and it is made up of different political blocs. We have only 33 political parties in Israel, so we need one more. And the parties are pretty much blocked together as socialist, ultra-left type parties, ultra-Orthodox Jewish parties, Islamic parties, and some nationalist parties, which are, I would say, more traditional conservative politics. And we have 10 Muslim members of Knesset representing their constituency in Israel. The Muslims are about 20% of the Israeli population. They've got 10 members of Knesset, which means about 10% of the Knesset members represent 20% of the people. The Christians today in Israel are 2% Arabic-speaking Christian and 6% Russian, Ukrainian-speaking Christians. That's 8%. And 6% of the population of Israel is Jewish, married to the 6%, which is Christian. I'm giving ballpark figures. So we're talking basically, I'm talking about a constituency of about 14% of Israel, I believe would support a Judeo-Christian Western civilization and democracy party. At the same time, 3 million Israelis have at some time lived in Western Christian countries. And without getting into politics, I will say that it is a given that Western civilization democracy parties, Western Europe, America, Canada, are known to be very, very beneficent to the population. We do not have in Israel today a Judeo-Christian Western civilization and democracy party. And we have, like I said, 10 Arab Muslim members of Knesset. We do not have one Bible-believing Christian in the Knesset from any party. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a political party where for every 40,000 votes, the next man or woman on the list gets in. And my candidate list, we don't vote for individuals per district like here in the United States. We vote in Israel for party lists. And so my party list candidates will be Jew, Christian, Jew, Christian, Jew, Christian, Jew, Christian. In other words, it'll be a 50-50 Jewish-Christian partnership. Now, I think last time when I was here, I spoke about a massive influx of Muslims from the Middle East into the United States. Did I not? I think I did. And I spoke about a lot of these Muslim immigrants coming here. 90% are peacekeeping, law-abiding citizens, according to the law enforcement. Only 10% are terrorists. I heard a statistic this week that 4.5 million Muslims already live in America. It used to be 2 million. A man who I greatly love and admire, Michael Medved, doesn't want me on his show because I say 20 million Muslims in America. He says 2 million. He says you have to be responsible with the numbers you give. And he said 2 million. Now they announced it's 4.5 million. And I think I was wrong about the 20 million. There are really 30 million Muslims in America. Very soon to be 50 million or more, because all these Islamic countries are collapsing as a result of ISIS and the Arab Spring. And even if you have 30 million Muslims or 20 million Muslims and only 10% are terrorists, you're still talking about 2 million or 3 million. And how many people shut down the US on 9/11? 19. So you see, the problem facing America in 9/11 type attacks is a very, very serious problem. And if these people are educated in Islam, and they are educated in Islam, to kill the Jew on Saturday and to kill the Christian on Sunday. And you remember my joke I told at the end of the message last time. To kill the Jew, to kill the Christian, to kill the Hindu, to kill the Buddhist, to kill the blacks in Africa, and then the Muslims kill each other. And they call that a religion. And I told this in Switzerland in 23 cities and got a 3-year jail sentence for hate speech against a religion called Islam. And I said, Islam's not a religion, it's a criminal psychosis. And the key to my message tonight is that Allah is not God. Allah is Satan. And at the end of the message tonight, I think you're going to understand how Satan gets sent to the pits of hell for 1,000 years. We're going to talk about that tonight because it's going to be in our time. It's going to be in our generation. Now, getting back to the party, I do believe that these Muslims are going to come into this country as refugees, and at a certain given moment, they will receive the orders for jihad or holy war here on American soil or in Canada or in Latin America or in Europe, and they're going to start killing Jews. And if the Jews are married to Christians, which they are, they're going to kill Christian spouses too, and children of the intermarriages. This is going to unleash a massive tsunami of immigration to Israel, of Jews and Christian spouses. And maybe more. I don't applaud, this is almost like a Holocaust scenario. The good news is there is a state of Israel. The good news is that there is, I believe, an alliance forming between Jews and Christians. And on my part, I'm going to create an alliance in Israel of Jews and Christians. So I also believe that the Messiah is coming or returning to Jerusalem, not only for the Jehovah's Witnesses, and not only for the Southern Baptists, and not only for the Catholics, and not only for the Jews. The Messiah is coming for the entire human race to Jerusalem. And so every nation will be represented in Jerusalem. We just finished the Feast of Tabernacles just a few days ago. And what does it say? It says in Zechariah that any nation that does not serve the Lord in Jerusalem at the Feast of Tabernacles will get no rain. So even if there are people in Israel in the Jewish administration who don't like the idea of Christians in the land of Israel, they're going against Scripture. They're going against Jewish Scripture. Okay. So my plan is going to be to, God willing, complete this trip. You know, Jews don't like when I say Christmas time, so I'll say Hanukkah time. I met some Christians this week who say, oh, we don't like Christmas. Hanukkah, we get 8 days of, gifts. And January, February, March, God willing, I will be staying full-time in Israel, and I'm not going to budge until the Bible Block Party gets registered. We've been talking about this now for many, many years. We have 70 signatures. We only need 30. I've been waiting for these Nazareth Christians to come, and they're afraid. And I justify them because there are 100,000 Arabic-speaking Christians in Israel surrounded by 1.5 million Muslims. They're very afraid, and they have a right to be, because the Arabic-speaking Muslims of Israel have said to the Arabic-speaking Christians, you see what's going on in Iraq and in Syria and Lebanon? It's going to happen here too. We're going to kill you guys here too. They say it to the Christians very, very boastfully. So it's going to be very important for the Jews of Israel, for all of us to stand by our Arab-speaking Christian brothers and sisters. And those who speak Russian in Israel, they know what to do with the Muslims. Okay. So anyway, I'm hoping to become the Israeli Huckabee. After 25 years of preaching, the time has come for political action. And in this case, it is to prepare for a very, very big party. When I say party, it has a number of meanings, of Jews and Christians receiving the Messiah in Jerusalem. And I think, yes, I think this is in our time. And at the end of the message, you'll understand why I'm saying this. Okay. So enough has been said about the party. And so now we're going to do the official teaching. You know, I've said this last time. Before the rabbi speaks, he says, before I speak, I'd like to say a few words. So I said a few words. Last time when I was here, I spoke about the book of Genesis, and I was explaining about how God has a chosen lineage, the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if you look at the New Testament, it says there, these are the generations of Jesus Christ, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you see, Jews and Christians have something very, very much in common. We have a chosen genealogy. And I said that Islam has another genealogy. That it wasn't Isaac who was supposed to be sacrificed on Mount Moriah. It was Ishmael who was supposed to be sacrificed in Mecca, at the Black Stone, the Kaaba. Is that what is written in our Holy Bible? The Holy Bible of the Jews and the Christians? But that's the Islamic tradition. They have another, I don't want to say they're playing another bowl game, they're playing in another ballpark. They're not playing the same game that the Jews and Christians are playing in. And I'm going to talk about that black stone today. That black stone is a key to the future of this planet Earth. After the 9/11 attacks in New York City and Washington, Pennsylvania, the plane that went down in Pennsylvania, there was a representative from Colorado, Tom Tancredo. How many people remember the name Tom Tancredo? A few hands. You know what he said right after 9/11? He said, if these Muslims carry out another 9/11 attack on the United States, nuke the black stone in Mecca. How many people remember he said that? I'm not making it up. The problem with Mecca, nuking Mecca, is that you're going to kill 2 million people. And I don't want to kill anyone. What I'm talking about is something that will not take the life of one person. I suppose I've piqued your interest. But the black stone is the vortex of all the evil in the world. ISIS, did you know that ISIS has said they want to blow up the black stone? ISIS said they're going to blow up the black stone because the black stone was a heathen, pagan place of evil pagan worship, and that Muhammad had no right to take a pagan, filthy place and make it the center of Islam. ISIS said this. Does anyone remember having heard this? Okay. So let's talk now a little bit about the generations. I don't want to repeat what I said in the teachings last time because we have to get onto new stuff tonight. But we know that God says 4 times Isaac, 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 not Ishmael, not Midian, not the children of Keturah, the children of the concubines. God says, send them all away with gifts. And we know that all these rejected children, they're all children of Abraham, but they hate Isaac, and they hate the generations that came out of Isaac because they were the rejected ones. And I think I mentioned last time that in many families, you're going to find children who are saved, anointed by God, and you're going to find children who are not saved, not anointed by God. And there's a tremendous animosity within the family between the siblings that are saved and those who are not. How many people know this? And there are families where the parents are saved or anointed and the kids are not. And there are families where the kids are anointed and the parents are not. How many people know that in your families? And there's a strong hatred towards anyone who is saved or anyone who's anointed. I say anointed because Jews will be anointed, Christians will be saved. But we all serve that same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if, God forbid, somebody is an atheist or doesn't believe, that atheist is going to hate those that believe, not the other way around. Those who are saved or anointed of God do not hate the siblings or family relations that are not saved. You pray for them. You don't hate them. And you remember when Jacob got the blessing first, and Esau came to his father, he said, bless me. And Isaac said, you'll live by the sword. Was that a blessing or a curse? That's a curse. He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. Isaac knew what he was dealing with here. And so Esau goes off and marries the daughter of his uncle Ishmael, the guy who sodomized his father. Remember, we spoke about this last time. How many people remember we spoke about this last time? It's in the Hebrew, mitzachek. Ishmael was a wild donkey, a man of war. His hand will be against everyone else's hand, and everyone else's hand will be against his hand, and he was a sexual pervert. And he is the role model for every Muslim in the world today, Ishmael. He was the role model for Muhammad, who was basically the same kind of guy. And so Esau goes off and marries the daughter of that man, of his uncle. There's a lot of baggage in the Bible. You have to read between the lines. I don't know if I said this last time, but you remember Joseph? Joseph is put down in the pit by his brothers. They're going to kill him, but first they want to have lunch. They're hungry. They have to make a barbecue first. He said, we'll come back in a few hours after our barbecue, then we'll kill Joseph. And somebody lifts him out of the pit, takes him away. He's not there in the pit anymore. You know who took him out of the pit? His cousins. There was a caravan of Ishmaelites and Midianites. We're going to talk about that today. And remember, Midian and Ishmael are half-brothers of Isaac. And you go down 2 generations, they were second cousins. The caravan of Midianites and Ishmaelites pulled Joseph out of the pit. They would have let him go. It's their flesh and blood, their cousin. No, they take him to Egypt and sell him to Potiphar for 30 pieces of silver. Because they hated him. They hated his brothers. They hated Jacob. Because we were the chosen ones. And this applies to every Christian and every Jew. The lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, now we start Exodus tonight. How many people remember the Cecil B. DeMille 10 Commandments movie? I mean, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. And I don't know if you remember the beginning of the movie, Moses is coming back from a successful military campaign in Africa. How many people remember this? I don't know if you remember the beginning of the movie. Africa. How many people here know that Moses fought a war in Africa? How many? these are not trick questions. How many people have Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews, at home? Read it, chapter 3. How many people remember Moses has a black wife? He has a Cushite wife. And Miriam badmouths her, and so God gives her leprosy. So, some people say, oh, that was Zipporah. She was the Cushite wife. Was Zipporah Cushite? She wasn't. Moses had 2 wives. So this is the story. I'm going to start sharing a few things. We're going to build up. You're going to see some history of Africa, some history of Arabia, some history of Egypt and Israel. And my faith is that what we learn from the past directs us to the future. You all know that Moses in the Torah is put in a little crib with pitch, so the crib won't sink. And Pharaoh's daughter takes him out of the Nile. And he's raised in the house of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's daughter calls on Miriam and the mom, Yocheved, to come and breastfeed the child. And then the next verse you read, he kills the taskmaster, and then he has to flee, and he marries his cousin Zipporah. And what happened all those years? What's the history of Moses? There's no history of Moses. On the contrary, what we see about Moses is that he stuttered. You know the joke about we were not supposed to go to the Holy Land after slavery in Egypt. We were supposed to go to Canada. How many people know this one? You don't know this one? We're going around in circles in the desert. And the Israelites say to Moses, Moses, our leader, where are you taking us? He was trying to say Canada, but he was stutterer. So he said, Canaan. So we went to Canaan. Canaan? Forgive me for saying it, but the Torah, in certain ways, is not flattering to Moses. The Torah is not a book that tries to make human beings look godlike or powerful, like Greek or Roman philosophy. That's how we know the Torah is a true book, because the Torah points people out as human and frail. But Moses was a military leader, military general. He saved Pharaoh's Egypt from an attack and invasion from Africa, from Cush. Some people say Cush is Ethiopia. I would tend to believe that it was Sudan. I was convinced of this by Walid Shuabat, who explained that Ethiopia is not going to attack Israel in the Armageddon War. It says, Iran, Libya, and Cush. It's not Ethiopia, it's Sudan. Why not? Ethiopia is Christian. Why would Ethiopia attack Israel? Sudan. And we do know that the history of Josephus and Moses is that it happened on the Nile River. So the Nile has the White Nile and the Blue Nile. One goes to Ethiopia, one goes to Sudan. So an army from Sudan invades Egypt, overruns Egypt, and the Egyptian army cannot stop them. And all the Egyptian generals chicken out. And Moses, the Hebrew, because they all knew he was a Hebrew, said to Pharaoh, give me some men, I'll defeat them. And all the other Egyptian princes were so happy to send Moses to his death. But Moses did something very Israeli. He circumvented the Ethiopian or the Sudanese army, came around from the rear and defeated them. And then he went on to the Sudanese city there, laid siege, and some beautiful princess, daughter of the king, was on the ramparts, and she saw Moses. She fell in love with him. She sneaked out through the back door of that city and went over to Moses and said, if you marry me, I'll deliver the city in your hands without a drop of blood. What's Moses going to say? No? So he married her. And Josephus says he consummated the marriage. That's the woman that Miriam didn't like. Okay. So Moses comes back in the Cecil B. DeMille movie, 10 Commandments, as the great conqueror of Africa. That's history. It's not in the Torah, because it would make Moses look like some military genius or something, which he was. There's also a midrash. How many people have heard of midrash? Midrash are the interpretations of the rabbis of the Torah. It's called Yalkut Shimoni, the Simeon file. And this was written in Germany, actually, in the 12th century, 13th century. And it talks about a similar story. There's another story in Sefer HaYashar, the book of Jasher, as Americans would pronounce it. Also, Moses fought in Africa. It's not in the Torah, because it does not fit the ideology of the Torah. So there are a number of approaches about the killing of the taskmaster. According to the Torah, he's a young man, kills the Egyptian taskmaster, and he flees to Jethro. And then he marries the daughter. All this is like in 2-3 verses. According to Yalkut Shimoni, he goes to Africa in the battle, marries the queen, who is now a widow of the king who died from some mysterious disease. And then when he's 67, they decide they don't need him anymore, and they send him off into exile. He goes to Jethro at age 67. Jethro throws him in jail for 10 years. Zipporah feeds him for 10 years while he's in the pit, and then convinces her father that Moses, who's now 77, should marry her, and they have 2 children. But the 2 stories reconcile at age 80. Then Moses goes back and confronts Pharaoh. I would probably stick with Josephus, with the story of Josephus. Moses had the best education that any Egyptian could have. You know that Moses could have been Pharaoh had there been a twist of fate. Moses, I believe, after he kills, let's say he kills the taskmaster at age, he's 40, and the taskmaster is killed and he has to flee. And he starts serving God at age 80 after the burning bush. So you have 40 years that Moses is like, how shall I say, an understudy to his father-in-law and cousin, Jethro. We're only talking about 4 generations difference between Jethro and Moses. They're cousins, 4th generation removed. Now, I have a very, very unusual take on this. I have not heard any other Jew in the world or any other Christian say what I'm going to say tonight. I may be wrong, but I feel I'm right, and I'm sharing this, and let God be the judge. When you ask rabbis, where were the 40 years wandering in the desert? The rabbis say the Torah is not a GPS, we don't know. Could it have been in China? Could it have been in Africa? Where did the 40 years in the desert take place? My contention is that the 38 years were in the Arabian desert. Why do I say that? I have a number of reasons to say it. You know, my wife and I, Rachel and I, are a very romantic couple. Instead of going to Blockbusters to pick up, movies, romantic movies, we watch the Saudi and Egyptian news, channels and their weather reports. And when you see the weather map of Saudi Arabia, the 2 holy cities of Islam are Mecca and Medina. Mecca, relatively speaking, is a new city. I believe during the time of Moses, there was no Mecca. During the time of Moses, there was a black stone in the middle of the desert. Nobody knows how it got there. Some people say Nephilim, some people say UFO, all kinds of theories how that black stone got there. The black stone in Mecca is not indigenous to the Arabian desert. The city that was always there was the city of Medina. You have Mecca, you have Medina. Medina was a city. Medina was an oasis, had lots of water, had lots of trees. And one of the names of Medina, when you look at the Saudi TV station and you see the weather, or Al Jazeera, it says Medina Minawara. Now, it doesn't maybe sound similar to you, but Minawara means all lit up. In other words, the all lit up city of Medina. What word in Hebrew do we know similar to Minawara? Menorah. What's the menorah? It's all lit up. I have a DVD on the back table which I have the honor to offer to you tonight. I didn't make the DVD. It was made by Jim and Penny Caldwell. How many people know Jim and Penny Caldwell? I see a few hands. These are good Christian people. They live in Mississippi. And they lived in Arabia at the, I think it was Ras Tanura oil fields, eastern Arabia. They were there 12 years. And on their free time, they would go camping out in the desert. And you know where they'd go camping? They'd go camping to Mount Sinai. How many people heard of Mount Sinai? Now, Helena, St. Helena, the mother of Constantine, went to the Holy Land, built churches everywhere, and then she went down to the Negev and Sinai, and some Bedouins said, hey, it's over there. And that became Santa Caterina in the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. But the Caldwells found the real Mount Sinai. This is my faith. I agree with this 100%. They went to Saudi Arabia, and you have to understand something. Jews and Christians cannot travel around freely going camping in Saudi Arabia. I don't know how they did it. They really risked their lives. But the Bedouin were telling them, Mount Moses is over there. And they get there to Mount Moses, and it's fenced off by the Saudi army. It says anyone who crosses this fence is going to get shot. Now, you know, there's nothing more enticing than when you can't have it. They went through the fence. They got arrested. They survived it. And they spent time within the fence. And they found things. It's all on the DVD. I'm not going to talk so much about it, but the point I'm saying is Mount Sinai is about 200 miles south of Eilat Aqaba. It's in the northwestern part of Saudi Arabia. We're going to get to this. I'm going to talk more about this. Now, another name for the city of Medina is Yathrib. Yathrib in Arabic means Jethro. The city of Medina is called Jethro by the Arabs because everybody knows who Jethro was. And you know, in our Holy Torah, in our Holy Bible, God never speaks badly about Jethro. It's a very unusual thing because Jethro was not Jewish. He was from Midian, who was also from Abraham, but it wasn't considered from the lineage. He's from the rejected lineage. So you have Medina Munawwara, Medina with the menorahs, or the enlightened area Medina. And then you have Yathrib, which is Jethro. Jethro was there. So why am I talking about this? Because I believe, as high priest of Medina, he would go on pilgrimage down to Mecca. Mecca was just a black stone in the middle of the desert. And I think that Moses was an understudy to Jethro for 40 years. He was a shepherd. I mean, you know, he found the burning bush also, Mount Sinai. But he probably also went on pilgrimage to that black stone. So here comes the part where I begin to start asking questions. I'm in seminary. I'm in the Jewish Theological Seminary. Some people call it the Jewish Theological Cemetery, but you know, people who hear about cemeteries and seminaries think sometimes you're supposed to learn, but you're not supposed to ask questions. And I had a penchant for asking questions. That was not good. So now I'm going to start teaching you Arabic and Hebrew tonight. What do you call a Muslim pilgrim to Mecca? Hajj. Hajj, H-A-J. How many people know the word Hajj, now that I've mentioned it? I think Leon Uris also wrote a book called The Hajj. Now, I have the fortune of being married to Rachel. Rachel is an Egyptian Jewish woman. And in Egyptian Arabic, the word Hajj has a different pronunciation. The J becomes a G. So the Egyptians pronounce it Hag. If you go to Mecca, you're a Hag, not H-O-G. So you have Hajj, and you have Hag, and then I start to think. Because I look in Exodus, and I see Moses confronting Pharaoh, How many times does Moses say to Pharaoh, let my people go? 6 times. The second to the fifth to the sixth time, 5 times he says, let my people go. And the word in Hebrew is she'ya'avduni bamidbar, that my people will serve the Lord in the desert. Serve the Lord in the desert. But the first time is different. Shlachet ami, let my people go. She'yahoguli bamidbar. Hogu means hug in Hebrew. She'yahogu means that they may celebrate the Lord in the desert. You know, King James, we use King James in the Jewish synagogues. It's Elizabethan. Jews like the fancy English. But I think there's another meaning to the word. How do you say happy holiday in Hebrew? Chag Sameach. Hey, wait a second. Is there possibly some connection there? Hajj in Arabian Arabic, Hag in Egyptian Arabic, and Hag in Hebrew. Is there a connection? I say yes. Because you see, the word Hag has another meaning. The word Hag in Hebrew means to go around in circles. How do you say an airplane in Hebrew? Matos. When the plane is circling over the airfield, you say matos hag. The plane is circling over the airfield. I don't know if you can begin to feel there's a Pandora's box here. The word hug in Hebrew means like a circle. When you're all sitting around in a circle, it's a hug. Or when you're studying Hebrew, hug ivri. Hag, hug. There are many words. How many people remember the rotary telephone? That's called telephone chuga. Chuga, chug. It goes around in circles. So Moses says to Pharaoh, Shlachet ami sheyachogu li bamidbar. Let my people go so that they may go around in circles in the desert. So you could think of 38 years in the desert, but it also means another thing, I think. And that is to go around the black stone. You have to remember, this is not a Muslim place. This is a pagan place. And you have to remember the Israelites in Egypt in slavery were pagans. Rabbis hate it when I say that. Does anyone know what the gods were of the Hebrew slaves in Egypt? The male and female cow and bull. How many people know that? This is very clearly explained in the DVD of Jim and Penny Caldwell. I mean, didn't you ever ask yourselves, why was the high priest Aaron not executed for making the golden calf? I mean, today we look back, what a horrible abomination, the golden calf. But you see, and Aaron says to the Israelites, here are your gods. And Aaron was not punished because he was restoring the gods that the Israelite slaves knew in Egypt. Because the whole idea of Judaism starts at Mount Sinai after we leave slavery. But when we were in slavery, we prayed to the male and female bull and cow. And the golden calf was basically giving the people back a God to believe in. That's why Aaron was not executed. Aaron was not punished at all, for the golden calf, the sin of the golden calf. All of a sudden, God reveals himself to Moses, and then Moses comes to Pharaoh, who thinks he's God, and he comes to the Israelites and says, guess what? We have a God. We can't see him. We can't hear him. We can't touch him. Can't even look at him. So the Jews, the Israelites, they leave slavery. Before they leave slavery, they're commanded to put on phylacteries, these little cubes, which I think remind me of the black stone in the cube in Mecca. The symbol of slavery was the pyramid, the triangle. The symbol of freedom in the desert was the cube, the black stone. This is my theory. There's nobody else saying it. I could be 100% wrong, but these, I think, are things that fit. Moses says to Pharaoh, let my people go so that they can be 3 days' journey in the desert. It didn't mean 3 days from Cairo. I believe the 3 days were the pilgrimage itself. Because the Hajj is how many days? 3 days. We're talking about a pagan tradition that has been there for 4,000 years. After the time of Muhammad, it became Muslim, but before that, it was pagan. So let my people go so that they may go around in circles in the desert. Go around the black stone 7 times. 3 days in the desert is the time of the Hajj. It takes 3 days to do the Hajj in the Mecca. And that horrible slavery was a pyramid. And freedom in the desert was a cube. People were primitive. People needed something to touch, something to tangible. You know, I say to the rabbis, but you know, we were in Arabia. No, it doesn't say Arabia anywhere. One of the most boring parts of the entire Bible is the tent of the meeting. It explains about wooden beams, it explains about curtains, and it explains about how the curtains will be hanging, and boring technical stuff. But I found something there that shows that the Torah is a GPS. The Torah is a GPS. It says these beams will face, on the left-hand side, they're going to face north. The beams in front of us will face Kedem. Kedem means east. The beams to the right are going to face Yemen. Where's Yemen? Yemen is to the south of Saudi Arabia, to the right. And behind us, the beams are going to face Yamma. Yam means the sea. What sea? The Red Sea. One of the theories of the Caldwells, Jim and Penny Caldwell, is in Hebrew, it's not Yam Suf, the Reed Sea or the Red Sea. It's Yam Sof, which means the end of the world. Because the Saudi peninsula is surrounded on all sides by ocean, by sea. Yam Sof, Sof means the sea, the end of the continent. I was very, very much influenced and affected by Jim and Penny Caldwell. Their DVD is a Christian DVD made in a Calvary Chapel in San Jose. I'm a Jew coming with the biblical aspect of the Jewish perspective. They come with the Christian perspective. 2 hands clapping together. It's Arabia. Then there's a story in the Bible about Pinchas, or in English, Phineas. Phineas takes a lance and he skewers a couple having sex in front of the tent of the meeting. Israelite prince having sex with a Midianite princess. How many people know the story? There was a plague because of this. The Israelite men were having sex. They were being seduced by the Midianite women. Why do Jewish men put on the 4 fringes, the prayer shawl? You look at, Numbers 15, 37 to 41. It says, put on that prayer shawl and the 4 fringes to remind you not to go a-whoring after other gods. Because all these pagan nations had sex as part of their ritual. And God is saying, that's not God, that's not religion. Where do we see this in the New Testament? Acts 15, Acts 21. What are the things that the new believers should abstain from? Eating meat offered to idols, which also includes Islamic halal, because it's meat offered to Satan. If Allah is Satan, you don't eat meat offered to halal means offered to Allah. Fornication means with the temple prostitutes. And then, of course, don't eat blood, don't eat strangled, which means eat kosher, slaughtered, and the blood drained, and the meat dried, salted. But the fornication does not refer to premarital or extramarital sex. It refers to sex with temple whores. The Greeks had it, the Romans had it, the Egyptians had it, the Babylonians had it, Antioch had it. So Phineas kills the Israelite prince and the Midianite princess, Cosbi, bat Tzur. What does Tzur mean in Hebrew? The rock. She was the daughter of the rock. I say the black rock, the Kaaba. And then a few chapters later in Numbers, there's a battle in which 5 Midianite kings are killed in battle with the Israelites. One of them is Tzur, the father, the rock. Does anyone know where Jethro is buried? No one knows? He's buried in Israel. He's buried just to the west of Tiberias. Jethro is the forefather of a group known as the Druze. How many people have heard of the Druze? The Druze are cousins. The Druze are descended from Jethro, who's a cousin of Moses. How many people remember that Moses says to Jethro, come with us to the new land? And the first time, Jethro says no. But the second time, Jethro doesn't answer. Jethro had a problem. He was the father-in-law of this crazy Moses. He was the father-in-law of the leader of these tribes that came out of slavery in Egypt and were devastating all these pagan tribes. And when Pinchas kills Shimri and Cosbi, he's got to get out of Dodge. Jethro has to get out of Mecca and Medina, and he has to go with the Israelites to the new lands that were promised to the 12 tribes. Where is this in the history books? Josephus. Josephus says that Jethro got a partition of land from the Israelites. How many people remember the battle between Barak and Sisera during the time of the prophetess Devorah? I'm sure you all studied this. And you know what happened. Sisera got a very big splitting headache. The woman who gave him the splitting headache, she drove the 10-pin through his head, was Yael, or Jael. J-A-A-E-L, or Y-A, in Hebrew, Yael. Yael was not a Jewish woman. She wasn't Israelite. She was a Druze. And this took place in the lower Galilee where the Druze are. We have a long history with the Druze. Okay. I don't know if you're beginning to see that there are things that are happening and there are movements. Jethro is buried in the land of Israel. Chapter 2, verse 2 of Deuteronomy. I mean, this is right after this battle that I'm talking about in the book of Numbers. From Numbers, we'll go straight into Deuteronomy. Chapter 2, verse 2, God says to the Israelites, enough being encamped on this mountain. Which mountain? Mount Sinai. Turn north and head to the lands that I've promised you, the land of the Amorites. So what does it mean, turn north? Where were we? If we have to turn north, where were we? We're south. We're in Arabia. What are the borders that God has promised Israel? From the Mediterranean to the Euphrates. Has that ever happened? No. And from Lebanon to the desert. What's the desert? Saudi Arabia. Why is it Saudi Arabia? Why isn't it the Negev? Okay, because the Negev is Judah. Sinai Peninsula of Egypt is Egypt. The Pharaoh had garrisons in Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, so it wasn't the Great Desert. The Great Desert was Arabia. You know, Solomon put up 2 pillars to denote the crossing of the Red Sea at Nuweiba. And so the Egyptians knocked one down, pulled it out to the sea, and the Saudis knocked one down, pulled it out to the sea, and they put soldiers around them, that anybody who goes swimming there, like scuba divers, will be shot. So I say, thanks. So now we know where it is. We know where the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. Solomon denoted it for us. I want to share something else. How many people remember 1 Kings chapter 19? Elijah the prophet has a contest with 450 priests of Baal. Who wins? Elijah wins. What's the result? 450 priests of Baal get executed by Ahab. And Ahab's wife, Jezebel, says to Ahab, you tell that Elijah that what he did to the 450 priests of Baal, I'm going to do to him. So now Elijah's got to get out of Dodge. So he has to flee from Mount Carmel from Haifa, and he literally runs, get down to Beersheba. And he's with his aide. And he's very depressed. You know, all the prophets have been killed. He's the only one left. And he leaves his assistant, says, I'm going off into the desert, to die. He wants to die. You know, prophets in Israel usually like to die. You know, Jonah wanted to die, and this guy wanted. It's not an easy thing to be a prophet. You know, there's no Social Security either, and there's not going to be Social Security anyway. But that's something else. Anyway, so he walks off into the desert one day travel, and the angel of the Lord appears before him and says to him, "Here's food and water. Get up. You got to eat and drink. You got to go." So what does Elijah do? He eats and he drinks. He goes back to sleep. I mean, he's got sunstroke, you know, heat stroke, desert, you know, dehydrated. So the angel of the Lord rouses him again and gives him more food and more water. How many people know this story? And the angel says to him, "You got 40 days and 40 nights walking in the desert till you reach Mount Horeb." 40 days and 40 nights. Take a map of northwest Saudi Arabia. That'll put you right there at Mount Sinai. And then what does he do? He goes into this cave. And he meets with God in the cave. And God says to Elijah, "Stop complaining, go to Damascus and appoint new prophets." Now I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to make you think. You know why I'm going to make you think? Because I don't have the answer. I'm thinking about it. Maybe you'll give me the answer. The Apostle Paul has his Damascus Road revelation. Where does he go after Damascus? Arabia. Why doesn't he go back to Jerusalem? The apostle says, "Guess what? I had a Damascus Road revelation." What revelation? Why does he go to Arabia? Something's happening in Arabia. I'm being taught by people. People are telling me things. You know, Jim and Penny Caldwell told me that the Apostle Paul was in that cave where Elijah was, on Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb. How's that for a trick question? Something's happening in Arabia. Okay. The problem with Arabia is that Muhammad killed all the Jews and Christians who were in Arabia, so we don't know. We don't know what was happening in Arabia. Maybe one day we'll find archaeological proofs or scrolls or something that explain the role of Arabia in this whole story. Okay. I don't know. This is not an easy subject. We're breaking ice here. It's something that nobody has ever spoken to about in the past. So it's in my 6th book, and it's in the DVD of the Caldwells. And the Caldwells said to me, "Listen, we were on that mountain. We know that God's presence was there. We felt God's presence was there. And we felt God was saying to us, this mountain cannot continue to remain under the control of the Muslims. And this mountain is holy not to the Muslims, it's holy to the Jews and the Christians. Isn't it holy to the Jews and the Christians, those who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and in Torah and all the gifts that God has given us? But it's under occupation by Saudi Arabia." Do you understand where I'm going? Why did I go through this whole teaching? Because what was is what will be. Now, if I go home to Israel, and I say to Jewish mothers in Israel that the Israeli army is going to take Mount Sinai and we're going to be in Saudi Arabia, the Jewish mothers in Israel will kill me. Because no Jewish mother wants her kid to go to Saudi Arabia. It's a horrible place. You know the difference between Doberman Pinscher and a Polish Jewish mother. The Doberman Pinscher eventually lets go. So, what I want to do now, I've made a point. We have an historic link to Mecca and Medina and Mount Sinai. This is what I believe. You read the text, you read the Bible, you see things there that point to us having been there and we're going back. Another thing, what does it say in Deuteronomy 11? It says the borders will be between the Mediterranean and the Euphrates and between Lebanon and the desert, which I think I've proven is Saudi Arabia. What else does it say? God says, wherever your feet have tread, I will give to you. Amen? So God says where our feet have tread. What did the Caldwells find? They found sandal markings everywhere in the Arabian desert. The stones have some kind of an inscription of a sandal on them that are not man-made. You cannot remove those markings on the stones. There's some kind of a technology that I don't know how those sandals were were inscribed with the sandal markings, denoting this is a holy place, take your sandals off. There were 52 encampments in the Arabian Peninsula where the Israelites stayed. And the Coldwells found a number of them. How many people heard of Bob Cornuke? Bob Cornuke bases his information on what the Coldwells gave him. They were living in Arabia. They couldn't go public yet. So now they're going public. Okay. So let's fast forward to today. I was here just 2 months ago, and ISIS was already wreaking havoc throughout the Middle East. They're killing Christians, they're killing Yazidis, they're killing Kurds, they're killing Shiites, they're killing their fellow Sunnis who are not kosher enough. Excuse me for using the word kosher. I'm watching the clock because I want to squeeze in the most important information. Now, one of the things I said last time, 2 months ago, I spoke about the harlot riding the dragon. And I said that Islam is the dragon, Allah is the dragon, Allah is the serpent, Allah is Satan. What's a harlot riding the dragon? The harlot is a man, woman, or system paid for services rendered. And you remember last time I spoke about the Dallas Council on World Affairs. I'm not going to repeat this thing, we don't have time. The One World Government, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Mason-Dixons, whatever you want to call them, these people ain't Christians. And the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is not their God. Their God is Mammon. Either you serve the Lord or you serve Mammon. These people serve Mammon. The statistics consistently show in the United States that 70% of Americans are Christian and go to church. 70%. But the people that control Washington, the people that control the economy are not Christians. Their God is Mammon. Money. And if the Muslims are paying the money, and if the Muslims are providing the oil, so be it. Let the Christians praise worship in the churches. It doesn't affect them. Because they have the power. They have the control. The money people. And I spoke about this last time. I'm going to repeat it briefly. But all of these things point to what is about to happen in Saudi Arabia. And what is about to happen in Saudi Arabia is going to lead to the collapse of Saudi Arabia and international intervention to prevent the oil wells from getting blown up by ISIS. Because if you blow up the oil wells, the world economy collapses within 2 weeks. How many people know that? I'm driving around the United States. I'm really, really happy camper. I paid $2.99 a gallon. How many people have paid $2.99 a gallon in the last few days? Didn't you notice gas prices going down? They will continue to go down even to $2.50 until what date? November 7th. November 7th. They got your vote? Afterwards, forget about it. Okay. I have to tell you a little story. It has nothing to do with the message tonight, but it sort of does too. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whom I greatly admire, was prime minister between 1996 and 1999. Bill Clinton was president, and he was not only twisting the arm, he was twisting off the arm of Netanyahu, and Netanyahu had to make the territorial concessions, which basically led to the downfall of Netanyahu. I won't go into everything. You know what stopped the pressure on Netanyahu? Something happened, and it stopped Clinton from pressuring Netanyahu. And I call it Queen Esther. You know who Queen Esther was? Monica Lewinsky. Some people say the Mossad Center. After the Monica Lewinsky affair, all the pressure on Israel stopped. Bill Clinton now had other things on his mind other than Israel. And you know what the first thing he did was, Bill Clinton? He flew to Saudi Arabia, and something happened very interesting with gasoline prices. I don't know if you remember this. I remember this. I'm a traveling itinerant preacher the last 25 years, driving. And I spend a lot of time in Odessa, Midland, Texas, where they have oil. And my Christian friends explained to me it costs $18 a barrel to get it out from under the ground. And the price of gasoline in 1998 was $18 a barrel. And they said to me in Texas, if it's under $18 a barrel, then it doesn't pay to take the oil out from under the ground. Bill Clinton goes to Saudi Arabia after the Monica Lewinsky affair, immediately after the Monica Lewinsky affair. First thing he does, he's there 3 days, and miraculously the price of the barrel of oil goes down from $18 to $8 a barrel. How many people remember this? I remember it because I was driving around the country. My Texas friends were telling me these things. I remember January 99 driving through Atlanta, Georgia, and I filled up with gasoline at 69 cents a gallon. This is 1999 January. How many people remember 69 cents a gallon? It made no sense because it costs $18 a barrel to make it. So how are you going to sell it for $8 a barrel? But see, the Saudis, they open the spigot, they close the spigot. They open the spigot, they close the spigot. And when the Senate nullified the impeachment of Bill Clinton, the price went up from $8 to $32 a barrel overnight. There was a deal. The president sold out the United States to the devil, to Saudi Arabia. You do it, bring it down to 8, then you bring it up to 32. It's all manipulation. I have news for you. The barrel of oil still costs only $18 a barrel, maybe 20 with inflation, maybe 25. Do you know that ISIS has taken some oil fields in Iraq and Syria, and they're selling the oil for $35 a barrel? $35 a barrel. And ISIS is still making money. You know what that means? You know what that means about your oil companies? That they're charging 3 times what they should be charging for a barrel of oil, for a gallon of gasoline. So the price of gasoline for the car should not be $2.50. The price of gasoline should be $1.20. Somebody is ripping off the American people. It's an international cartel decision. The point I'm saying is, United States, Canada, Europe, the Saudis, OPEC, all these countries are all in bed together, and they're comfortable because everybody's making money off the backs of the poor workers. I don't want to sound like a communist or a socialist, which I'm definitely not, but you're dealing with billionaire trillionaires who are mafiosi. They're mafia people. Okay. But let's talk rational things. How do you make plastic? With petroleum. You cannot have any economy without plastic. You cannot make plastic without petroleum. If ISIS takes Saudi Arabia, it'll be the end of the oil wells. How do you destroy Christianity? You destroy the economy of Christianity. How do you destroy the economy of Christianity? You destroy the oil. You prevent the oil from reaching Christian countries like China, India, and Japan. In the eyes of ISIS, it's all Christian economy. This is a problem for the entire world, and that's the key. Islam will not be terminated by the Jews or by the Christians. Islam will be terminated by the one world government and will say, this ISIS has gone too far. And 92% of the young people in Saudi Arabia, 92% of the young people support ISIS. Do you think that the West can stop that? ISIS will take Saudi Arabia. ISIS will take Jordan. And if ISIS takes Jordan, do you think that Israel's borders will remain the same borders? I think all the land should be returned to us. And the land will be returned to us because Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, all these countries are going to undergo civil war and ethnic cleansing that the Muslims are doing to each other. We, as Jews and Christians, would never do these horrible things. They're doing it to each other because their God is the devil. And you know what? Let's look at one of the consequences of a failure for the oil to reach the markets. Oil goes up to $300 a barrel, world economy collapses. How many people heard of David Wilkerson? The cities, the ghettos going up in fire. Let me tell you, the city's going to go up in fire because millions, billions of people are going to die from starvation, sickness, and chaos from what this oil failure is going to, if it happens. I think the one world government people, in their own way, they have our better interests at heart. Like, no way, Jose. We're not going to let these people, these ISIS people, destroy the oil wells. And so the one world government people, through the United Nations, are going to declare an international emergency. There are going to be 2 international emergencies. Tens of millions of Muslims are going to come live in America. The Saudis are going to build houses for them. America is going to have one of the greatest economic revivals ever. The dollar will be stronger than ever in American history. The housing, it won't be a bubble. The housing explosion will be so great, the building in America, that the American economy will be great. People like Obama or people, who are part of this one world government, they're going to be given all the credit. Because the Saudis are going to be pumping money into the United States to build houses so that tens of billions of Muslims can come in and make this a Muslim country. Because when America becomes a Muslim country, all the other Christian countries fall, become Muslim too. This is the plan. This is what my wife picks up every day in Arabic. There's a reason I'm here tonight. The other thing, like I said before, is that the oil has to continue to flow. As long as the King of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Emirates keep pumping the oil and sending the oil, they can believe in any crazy Allah that they want, or any crazy Muhammad that they want. But the moment ISIS, the purists, come in, kill the King of Saudi Arabia, kill the King of Jordan, kill the royal family, overthrow the established order that is providing the oil, that is providing the money for the Western economy, then the one world government will intervene. And I predict that the oil wells will be secured by international forces under the decree of the United Nations. You can't let crazy people blow up the oil wells. Billions of people will die if the oil wells are blown up. And you know who's going to get mobilized? Israel. Israel's right there in northwest Saudi Arabia. You can see the Gulf of Aqaba from Mount Sinai on a clear day. And they will say to the Israelis, you go in and you help us. You take northwest Saudi Arabia. We can't do it without Israel. Israel's a military power now. And we will take Mount Sinai. That's the first thing we're going to take. But we will get to Mecca and Medina. Now, what's the problem here? What happens when Israel takes Mecca and Medina? The whole Islamic world is going to march on Israel. 1.5 billion Muslims. We cannot and we will not kill people, billions or millions or thousands. We're not interested in that. There's only one solution, and that is to cut the head off of the snake. When a snake is wrapping itself up around you and crushing you, you don't fool around with the coils. You chop the head off. The Satan, dragon, serpent, whatever you want to call it, is going to get its head chopped off. It's going to get... Now, Tom Tancredo said nuke it. Nuke the Black Stone. And I know, I think all of you know, there's something called killer satellites. How many people have heard of killer satellites? Killer satellites fire a laser beam from 60 miles up in space, and they can vaporize that stone in an hour or two. I don't know how many hours, or a short time. That black stone is going to be gone. There's going to be a hole in the ground. And Satan will be sent into the pit of hell for 1,000 years, because that's the end of Islam. There is no Islam without the black stone. That is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, the Hajj, to go around that black stone. I love the Muslims. They're great people. But the black stone is going to go, and that's when the Muslims are going to have a life. Just like the Germans in 45. We didn't kill all the Germans. We blessed them. We loved the enemy. What did Jesus say? Love the enemy. Destroy the system. The Islamic system will be destroyed. This is my prediction. The black stone will be destroyed, and then 1.5 billion Muslims are going to have to convert. That's when they're going to have a life, just like the Germans, just like the Japanese in 1945. MacArthur rebuilt Japan, the Allies, the Marshall Plan rebuilt Europe and the Germans. Look at Germany today. Germany today is the most important country in Europe, the most prosperous and advanced country in Europe, the Germans. And the Japanese are the best ally that America has in the Far East, because America did what Jesus said, to love the enemy. And I want you to know, I love the Muslims. I don't hate them. But that system is going to destroy the Muslims and destroy everyone else too. The system will be terminated. Now, when that happens, then that preempts a march on Israel of 1.5 billion Muslims, I think. Now, I'm about to conclude, so I have to make an important point here. How many people know that Allah is called Al-Makr in Arabic? I spoke about this last time. The Muslims call Allah, the moon god, Al-Makr. Al-Makr in Arabic means the greatest of all the liars and deceivers. The God of Islam is the greatest of all the liars and deceivers. If you're a Christian, who's the greatest of all the liars and deceivers? Satan, Hasatan. And this, Allah promised the Muslims the victory in the Six-Day War, 1967. Who won? The Israelis. Allah lied. And the Palestinians and the Arabs were saying, you know what? We knew he was a liar. This time he lied to us. We're going to abandon that liar God. When they say Allahu Akbar, it means Allah is greater. But Allah is not greater, he's lesser. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is greater. But who ruined it all? Moshe Dayan. Moshe Dayan comes to the Palestinians with the keys to the Temple Mount. He says, let's make peace. You see, Jesus teaches us, who is the king with 10,000 who goes off to war against the king with 20,000? Maybe it's better to send an ambassador of peace. How many people know that verse? It's there. You know where it is? I don't remember the exact quote, the chapter verse. It's together with another parable. Who is it who builds a tower without first counting the cost? Lest people say he started to build a tower and he couldn't finish it. How many people know that verse? That verse is common sense. That's why you know it. But who is the king who goes to war with 10,000 against the king with 20,000? And that was the guiding line for Moshe Dayan. We were now outnumbered not 2-1, we were outnumbered 100-1. The Arabs outnumbered us 100-1 in the 67 war. And Moshe Dayan said, you know what, we had this lightning victory, let's cut our losses, let's make peace right away with the Arabs. What did Churchill say? Magnanimous in victory. So Moshe Dayan was doing what Jesus said. But you see, the Muslims don't go by what Jesus said. The Muslims go by what Satan says, Allah. So you know what they said? Aha! Allah is the greater God because he did succeed in confusing such a brilliant man like Moshe Dayan, and he gave us the victory out of the jaws of defeat. We're going to stick with Allah. That's what the Arabs and the Muslims said. You have to remember, when they say Allahu Akbar, it does not mean God is great. Allahu Akbar means Allah is greater than the God of the Jews and the Christians. This is not a war of flesh. This is not between us and them or against Judeo-Christians and Islam. This is a war between God and Satan. How many people know the end of the book? How many people know to whom is the victory? The victory is now. And if you ask me, when is all this going to happen? I'm going to say, mañana, mañana, any day. So, you know, I have to tell you, how many people want to know when the temple is going to be built in Jerusalem? I'm sorry, we were thinking about questions and answers, but I'm going to wrap this up with this. I was in an Assembly of God church in Springfield, Missouri. Now, if you don't know, Springfield, Missouri is the buckle of the Bible Belt. I don't know if you know that. And I'm up on the pulpit sharing, and a woman gets up. And this happens in every church. A woman gets up and says, when are you just going to build a temple on the Temple Mount? And I said to her, listen, madam, you know, we have a problem here. You know, we cannot build the temple because the mosques are there, and we cannot touch the mosques because that will unleash World War III. So the pastor was sitting behind me, and he whispered, but he whispered just loud enough that everyone heard him. And he said, burn it down. So I turned around and I looked at the pastor. I said, Pastor, you can't burn down those mosques. Burn it down right now. He got fired. The Assemblies of God fired him because they couldn't tolerate that in the pulpit of the Assemblies of God to burn down the mosques. So if anyone here asks me when the temple will be built, the third temple, my answer is the following. The temple is secondary. The black stone in Mecca is primary. When the black stone is vaporized by satellite without killing one person, and the Muslims come to the realization that their God is not the greater God, that our God is the greater God and their God is Satan, that's when it will become irrelevant for them to have the mosques. And when the one world government harlot, now listen carefully, this is a Jew from Israel who's trying to interpret the New Testament and the book of Revelation, so you can take it with a grain or a ton of salt if you want. And the one world government comes to Israel and says, okay, we finished Islam, we've restored the one world order, the oil is flowing, the economy has been saved, and there is no more Islam because Islam is good for nobody, especially the Muslims, and we are commanding you, Israel, go ahead and build the temple. The one world government will say to Israel, build the temple, because the temple will be built, and then the leader of the one world government comes to the temple. Whoever that one world leader is, he brought peace, he brought stability to the world, and he says, I'm God. Do I need to say more? And so what happens is we know that the Messiah will be standing on the Mount of Olives very soon when that happens. Do you understand in what special times we live? Because the devil will be dispatched to the pits of hell for 1,000 years, and we're the generation that's going to witness it and probably do it. So this is a very exciting time that we're living in. We're chosen, we're privileged to live in this time. And God bless everyone, and just strap yourselves in. Pray hard, stand with Israel, stand with the Christian America, stand with the Christian countries of the world, and bring salvation to the entire human race instead of destruction, which is what Allah wants to bring. And God bless everyone.
We want to thank Avi for being with us tonight, and like I said early on, it was a powerful word that was coming to us tonight. Let's, as soon as we're released with prayer here, if anybody wants to purchase anything or talk to Avi or get him to sign anything, he'll be at the table in the back. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time together tonight, Father, the opportunities that we have to learn. We just ask that your hand be upon all of us, because I think we all do believe that we are that terminal generation, as Pastor Mark talks about. Father, give everyone a traveling mercies as they go home tonight, and bring us all together again on Shabbat. In your Son's precious name, amen.